do. Kenadie, who is joining me right here, Cobbin-Richardson, is someone that I've been working with for just about a decade now. We've been doing a lot of work with foster girls and doing what is really called self-leadership. And in the yoga world, it's also known as Svadhyaya, which is the self-study and self-examination, the building of self. I don't know if any of you have ever worked with somebody who you feel like they got your back and you got their back and it just flows. And that's, to me, that's like the perfect leadership partner. And I feel like that's what we've created together, as well as what we strive to create for the experience for youth that we work with, and eventually, and we'll talk later about how we're expanding this to women. So can you tell us a little bit about your path and kind of the formulation of starting this work with the foster youth?
I can. Thank you, Laura Lynn. So what I have realized is that everyone has a unique path, and when they arrive at something, it really is unique at what they're creating because it is the culmination of all the things that happen in their life. And so what we do have is something very unique, and it's we began our relationship with something that was very unique to me. I am from Youngstown, Ohio, just for a little bit of background, and I have two amazing parents who quite honestly have given me everything that I've ever, wanted or dreamed of. And so my best friend, and when I lived in LA, she said, I've lived a charmed life. And she might be right because, I didn't experience a lot of heartache, especially in my childhood. And I really enjoyed the love and support I got from my large family. And so I really believe that I had so much love that I had enough to give away. But even in high school, when my friends, had issues at school, I brought them home quite a bit. I mean, I had one of my friends stay with us for several months when her and her mom were going through some things. And, my mom and dad seemed always willing to jump in and help. So when I arrived on campus at my college, it was a really new experience for me. I felt that I had been exposed, but being alone, that first freshman year, it was a culture shock. And I really am from a small town. And so when, even though the college was only was small and 2,500 people, I really, felt homesick. And so I met a lot of people who were from bigger cities and had been exposed a little bit more and really saw me as a small town, girl who needed some protection.
Yeah.
And one of those was a young lady who actually had been in foster care for about 3 years. And so her entry into foster care had been horrific in the sense that her mom had really been a really different mom, beat her, in my opinion, was not sympathetic to the fact that her father was having sex with her and blamed her for it. And then she happened to be also her mom, highly religious, and told her she was going to pray the devil out of her and things like that.
Oh, man.
And so it was bad. So her and I became extremely close. She was my best friend and extremely supportive and funny and kind, and really opened my world up to a lot of things. She was from a big city, and I'm being a little, not mentioning the name of the college or anything like that, to protect her.
Yeah.
And so, because I went to 3 colleges, by the way. So you don't know which one I'm talking about if you know me. So
Yeah.
So she would just support me, and she was so brilliant that she was not ever satisfied with people she worked with on a mental health standpoint. In fact, she sometimes they'd be crying and she'd be, helping them. So she did find someone though that she did love. And we were both in English, so we read, lots of poetry by this one woman named Sonia Sanchez, and she was given the book Courage to Heal, and I read it too, and I realized that I began really living her life with her. and I would be depressed because what happens is when you are abused, especially for a long time, it was like 8 months to 16 years old, and you block it out because that's the only way you're going to survive it. And so, but it comes back unforgivingly in your 20s, 30s, or 40s. And while we were there, it came back as though she were experiencing it for the first time. So here's this beautiful, smart, capable woman who is, at night tortured with, the memories that she had stuffed away.
And this is something that they are discovering now about foster youth, is the level of PTS, that their post-traumatic stress that they are experiencing.
Right.
These stats are coming to light. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And they're greater than even the military. So, so you take the most damaged war, Vietnam War vet, and some foster youth have, greater levels of PTSD than even that person. So they start coming back, and my mom would be like, you sound depressed again. And she's used to me being, happy-go-lucky. And, then she said, babe, I love your heart. I love what you're doing. And I love your friend. But this is not your life. And I don't like seeing you depressed. I said, I know, Mom, but for some reason I'm going through this. And to fast forward, I find myself, I'd moved to Japan, and I started teaching over there. And when I returned to the States, I started teaching here. And in the inner cities, particularly in California, I found students who resembled who she might have been, had I met her years later. I taught honors English, and I taught, AP English, IB which is International Baccalaureate, if any of you are familiar with that out there. And so I got the smartest kids, but many of them were tortured at home by situations similar to my friends. And I happened to be a hard ass teacher. I had the grade book was public. I had it on the walls. And so you weren't allowed to ask me what your grade was. You had to go add it up and figure it out. If you failed, and you were embarrassed by that, that's your problem, study next time. I was loved as a teacher, but I also was a stickler for making sure that an A was an A was an A, that even though you're in an inner city high school, I demanded excellence in the classroom. And I also knew that children respond to expectations. So my expectation was high, and they met it.
Mm-hmm.
After they say it wasn't your teacher, don't smile till after Christmas. So around Christmas time, I started smiling. And they were like, "Oh my God, she's actually nice." Like, so when they started liking me and wishing for detention because they wanted to spend more time with me, even after school, I began to get more of their stories, because detention would be over. They might even get it and get it on purpose. They're like, "Okay, it's 4:00, you can go." And I'm like, "That's okay." Like, wait, what? I'm just sitting here with you. What time are you leaving? I'm like, let me get through these papers and I'm
Yeah,
leaving. They're like, "Well,
right.
I'll wait for you."
Yeah, it was like a safe space, I bet.
Right. It
Yeah.
became that. And so detention wasn't very, detrimental, put it that way. It became,
Yeah.
then it got to a point where I literally had as many kids in detention or after school that I had during the day. So I got 30 and 40 kids just hanging out with Ms. Cobbin, like, "Hey, this is what's going on." And I got stories about this one boy, actually, he said, "Can I turn in my homework?" And I had learned to teach in such a way that they begged for homework. And I got that from a professor. Shout out to Youngstown State University. And he said, "Your kids should beg for it." And so this kid was like, "Please let me do the homework. I couldn't do it last night. My dad locked me out of the house." And I said, "Oh," he's like, "if I'm not home by 7, he locks the door and then leaves and goes to his girlfriend's house." And I was like, "Oh, so you're going to be alone anyway?" He goes, "Yeah. So sometimes, I just didn't feel like it, but, you know, I hate being there because he treats me like a dog." And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, he just comes, he sets down the food, and he leaves." And that image to me, just really got to me. And he was under a street light, because I demanded, even, and this is actually in the late 90s, I demanded even then that they were typed, but he wrote his report, because he said I was under a street light in the park. And so, of course, so the hard Miss Cobbin, I was like, okay, go ahead and finish that and, turn it tomorrow. And then another young lady, she needed, she had a legitimate excuse. And these are all A students, right? So these aren't the slackers who are just trying to come up with another excuse. And she said, hey, my mom sold me to her drug dealer last night. I'm like, what do you mean by that? And, she made me have sex with a drug dealer so that she could get her drugs. And this wasn't the first time, but it happened. And she said, I was just messed up after that, Ms. Cobbin, and I just couldn't do my work.
Well, I wouldn't.
Listen, my mother raised her voice in the morning. I was done for the day, let
Yeah.
alone anything,
Yeah.
and
Right.
it was because I was late. You know what I mean?
Right.
Get down
Right.
here, I'm
Right.
coming.
Right. Right. So you had a
So,
lot of inspiration early on.
oh, I did. I
Yeah.
did. And so I said, okay. And so, but it was after situations, including the kid who felt like a dog, and then her being, because I felt you can't tell me that. And so what do I just say? Oh, well, that's unfortunate. Go ahead and turn in tomorrow, and we're done with that conversation,
No.
knowing that you were raped last night. And so, but the more I got involved with them emotionally, the relationship changes. You're not just a student. Now I'm wondering what happened last night. Are you okay? And, I'm now very involved in every part of your life. And then if I hear something I don't want to hear, what am I really going to do?
Yeah.
And how am I going to handle that? And it became a quandary for me on how to ignore what was really happening at home.
Yeah.
And the district, they have real strict rules about that. Like, what I
Yeah.
mean? They really don't want you very involved in those ways. But, the doors have been open now. You know, every hour they can with me, waiting till they leave. I had students, who in my, probably more like my regular classes, who would have like a B in my class and fail everywhere else. They're like, so what are you doing? That, they're doing your homework and not, and no one else's. And so my relationship with the kids, I could see that I had a talent or a gift, maybe that's a better way, a gift with them. So I prayed. I said, Lord, what do you want? Do you want me to remain this teacher, which I will do, or do you want me to handle the social, emotional difficulties of these kids? And his answer was, I want you to handle, and I actually said, or do you want me to be the lady in the community who handles that? And then he responded, the lady in the community. So I quit and I started HerShe, and um, and it was a summer program, I should say. It was just the summers where I was getting the kids together, and that grew in popularity, the summer portion. So I got another job and start working for Pfizer, and making more money, 3 times the money a teacher made,
Yeah.
which I've never been about money. So I was shocked. I was like, you paying me for this? What? And I felt that my work as a teacher was so much harder than my work as a pharmaceutical rep, but yet you pay me 3 times more. I'm like, there's something wrong with this equation.
Well, it's the values of our society, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but my dad's happy. I'm making more than I've, ever made. They sacrificed to pay for my college. So they're like, finally, this is what I paid for, so that you can, so you
Yeah.
can live life. And I was traveling with my, my friends at work. We were going to Italy and,
Yeah.
having a ball. But in the 4th year of that, the program had grown so much and the demand for it had grown so much. It was like, either you're going to do this or you're not, because the summer program is not enough.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do it, you got to quit that job and just do
Go
that.
for it. Yeah.
So I had enough money. I had a lot of money saved, because I really had nothing to do with all that money. I wasn't even used to
Right.
making all that money. So a lot of it was saved. And I was like, well, I have enough saved, at least to try to get off the ground. But I was afraid to tell my dad. So I quit without telling anybody.
Yeah.
And I'm really communicative with my parents. So, and they know what time I ate dinner last night. So
Yeah.
quitting my job was a big deal. So, some reason my mother asked me about a month in, and it probably about the time she's calling me, I'm always at home. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so she
Yeah.
goes, "Hey, did you quit your job?" I was like, "I did. I'm so sorry. I couldn't tell you, but I didn't want to be talked out of it. I didn't want to be reminded about the money, because it was a nice perk, but nowhere near something that I felt was necessary."
Right.
So I was like, "Okay, yeah, I did that."
Yeah.
So she took it. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you, and didn't you along the way get like extra degrees to support your understanding of this work too?
I
If I
did.
recall, yeah. So what did you get the degrees in? It was,
Well, organizational leadership and camp management.
and
Since
then
I was
didn't you do something with social work too? I
not a
thought,
degree, I worked for it wasn't a degree. I worked for a social work agency for 6 months so I can understand the
right,
social worker's job, and how, um, because they weren't doing the kids right, and I don't think it was they were trying to be mean, but the workload and the work process is also a little bit off.
right. This is one of the things I find so compelling about working with you is that wherever you see a need or a way to understand something more, you don't even think twice about it. You're like, yeah, I'm going to learn that. Yep, I'm going to do that. Yes, I'm going to learn that.
It's true.
It's true. And then
It
when
is.
you eventually started working for Workforce in Nevada, right? And how did that part of your job, how did that support your work as well with the girls?
Well, I wasn't doing as much when I didn't. It went back to a summer program, honestly,
Right.
once I got back to Nevada. In California, it's so there's about 500,000, half a million foster youth in the country, and 80% are in California. And so that's, I'm sorry, 20% are in California. So that's, 100,000 youth. And here in Nevada, where I still am, is 5,000. So their sense of urgency around foster youth was not the same as California. And so summer program was quite enough for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what were the other pieces that you put in between the summer programs? What were some of the key elements to the rest of the programming?
Well, it was just camp, and a lot of reading. There's always a book to read. I'm an English major, so there's a lot of book to read, for them to understand. And then when I decided to quit and go full force, then I built out the program to include mentoring, which was a key portion, and I needed a curriculum, that could extend their entire time in HerShe's. They came in at 12 or 13, and I didn't expect them to exit until 18, 17, actually I had emancipation at 18. And so, so I began looking for a curriculum, and I believe that the universe, responds when you put it out there. And I put it out there that I was looking, and then that's where I met lovely you and the other three ladies, who, began working with me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so over the last 10 years, what we've done is we've had everything from, like you said, the summer camp with pieces in between, and then doing some like a mid-year camp and things like that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times it's the funding factor, whether or not we can do and offer everything or not. And then also because, you're working full time again, starting your own business, the challenge of trying to do that and fundraise and run an organization and do the programming and everything. So that's kind of one of the reasons
Mhm.
that we have kind of merged these, because we can put all our efforts in one direction. So thinking back over those last 10 years, do you have any moments that you recall where you went like, wow, this is working. This program is working.
Yes. It's interesting. The kids are usually very um, skeptical when they come in. And so, the camp is about 10 days long. And when we began, it wasn't really until day 4, maybe even 5, that they finally let down their guard and realized that, they weren't a check to us, and that there was real love in this program, by everyone giving it to them. And because of what the curriculum that you brought, Laurelyn, created, there was a true sisterhood among the girls who had began, right? And so we named them Greek alphabet wise. And so there was the alpha group, the beta group, the gamma group. And they found that their alpha group was their sisters, and that's how they came into Hershey. They remembered all of that. So when new girls came in, by the time we got to the gamma group and they saw girls who had been in the program 2 or 3 years, I found that we had already earned their trust by day one. And, actually, and the ones who came in, who let down their guard day 2 were late. It's like, what about last night? Everybody else, was there day 1. And so that was one of the first indications. The peer leadership was evident very early. And even from a behavioral standpoint, the kids themselves police the new ones coming in. So if new one came in and thought they weren't going to really acquiesce and do it, the older ones, or the ones who had been in the program, because they didn't have to be older, actually, because if you came in at 15, but the girl who was 14 has been in here 2 years, she was ready to tell you, hey, no, that's not what we do here. And so that was the first indication.
Right. And we used, just to let people know, when that was identified, we then built that understanding into the third. So the program has 4 levels, and on the 3rd level, youth can come back and be a mentor and co-facilitate the program with us. And so we started using that power to give them even more understanding and experience and so forth within the community.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that leadership was important because you remember they're really, didn't have a lot of opportunities to be lead or important.
Yeah.
But they were that in Hershey. Then when, we had a lot of celebrity support, and one day, one of our greatest celebrities, they had no idea who she was because they were too young to know.
She was on TV when I was a kid.
Right. And so, but even then, like, I start singing Pleasure Principle by Janet Jackson one day, and I was karaoke, and I was like, hey, come on. That's, and they were just like, who's that? I'm like, that's Janet. Like,
oh my God. At least they knew who Michael was. I know that.
At least. But then I just realized how young these girls were really compared to me.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh God. So so they definitely didn't know this celebrity. And I don't know if later on you can put her name if and I don't know how comfortable I am even sharing it, but she had been going this celebrity had been going through some things in her personal life, in her relationships, and she arrived on campus at camp, damaged, clearly, visibly damaged, negative. Not towards the girls, but just towards her own life and where she had ended up, so to speak. She was married to someone very famous, also a rock star, truly.
Mm-hmm.
So there had been a lot going on with that, and the death of that relationship and how she moves on. She was questioning God, even. So she really was in the midst of it, and so. The girls, they knew she was a celebrity because we told them. So they were nice to her. And so she was F-bombing it, not on, purpose. That's obviously how she talked. And the girls aren't, they're used to that in the houses they came from.
Yeah, that's nothing
right.
new.
So that wasn't like, oh my God.
But they're not used to the people up front in the room.
Right.
In front of them.
Exactly. They weren't used to that happening in Hershey, put it that way. And exactly. So they were just like, okay. And so then she's speaking and she's trying to be the celebrity that gives the wisdom. But they give her a break and they go, hey. Let us talk to you for a minute. And they says, what's your favorite word? And then somebody goes, hey, we know her favorite word. Because she had dropped so many F-bombs. And they're like, maybe we should ask a different question. And she goes, yeah, you're right. What's your favorite food? So they are gently trying to move her really to another topic that's lighter, for her, it really wasn't for them. And, to know how damaged and hard their lives had been, for them to be so compassionate and so selfless, to recognize the pain in someone else and just say, hey, we can talk about food right now because we see where you are. And she was like, you okay? Chocolate chip cookies. And so she was able to move forward, and they begin to teach her all the skills that they had been taught. And that's when I knew it had really sank, because anytime you can teach what you've been taught, then we know you've mastered it. And she couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe that, she knew she'd asked under the auspice of coming to bless them, and she got blessed. And she was a major supporter financially after that, because she was convinced about what we were doing, because it had actually helped her. And she wasn't the first adult to recognize that. The mentors knew and benefited from the work that we were doing. And we had very important mentors. They were the head of Disney, or Universal Studios, or a record company. Like, they were not, your average person, in my opinion, who, and I'm only mentioning that to say that these are people who are accomplished. They're successful by most standards, and yet to understand the brokenness even within them, and how this work helped them heal divorces or childhood traumas or any of the things that they had experienced. I was like, wow. And we weren't doing therapy, right? So
no, not at all.
so it's not that either. And so it was so universal that it seemed to touch and help quite a few, and me.
Yeah.
I changed as a result of what was going on, and learned to so I bragged about the love, I received as a child, but you're still not without doubting yourself. You're not without self-esteem that could be improved. It doesn't matter. It's like something that we all suffer from. And
Yeah, it's definitely when you're around these young people, um, and I grew up with a really easy childhood too. And later on you find out their stories, and then the willing that they're the chance that they're, what am I trying to say? The fact that they're willing to trust you and to begin to try to love again someone that is completely foreign to their world is a huge testament, I think, again, to the power of this work and the space that's created for them. Yeah, it's, I could start crying.
I could too.
I was going to save this for my podcast, but we're here, and I'm just going to say it right now. One of my moments was was one of the summers we were doing camp at Pepperdine University in Malibu, and I think in their little, they would get a little bag, a backpack or something from all their mentors at the beginning, and one of them had those stickum things that you stick on the walls and stuff. And one day I came back, because this was like I don't know how many years I had been there, but I came back and there were stickums all over my door of my dorm room. And there was one right in the middle that just said, "Thank you for always coming back." And I just thought, oh my God, all I have to do is show up once a year like this. I mean, I showed up more than once a year, but it's not like I was taking care of these young people every day of my life. And that just really got me to understand how, they had no support at all. And just what we gave over that summertime, and then, in the middle of the year, and then what they got through their mentors, it was just so significant. And now we're at the point where we're starting to see, I don't know if you saw on Facebook, but another one of our girls just graduated from college.
Wow. Who was that?
And Genesis. So, and you'll see on the website, we're going to put the stats, kind of the success rate, but the success rate of going one in 10 will get into college, 1 in 100 will complete. So the fact that one of these girls completed college is huge. It's so huge that Kenadie flew from Vegas Kendall, one of the mentors, flew from LA, and I flew from Hawaii, and we all met in the Bay Area to go to one girl's graduation. So it's a yeah, I don't mean to go on and on about this, but it's just something that you probably feel coming out of our hearts. It's really significant. So I guess that leads kind of like, why is this important in the world that we do this work, Kenadie?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is there's so many girls hurting. Our particular penchant, our niche is girls and women. I have the same love for boys. It's just that I think that our gift is, with the female population. And when I realized they had no support, that it's possible that the Hershey voice was the only positive voice in their life.
Yeah.
When they emancipate, they are asked how many relationships they have, and most of the time, girls who are not Hershey girls say zero,
Hmm.
because only person they've been involved with is their foster parents, or their social worker, who all go away, at the time of emancipation. And Hershey girls said 6 to 8 connections. Um, and that was a goal to change that. They were able, so the mentorship portion they got, it was a year long, but at the end of that year, they were able to either get another mentor or stay with their same. And some mentors were hurt when their girls chose another one, and they're like, no, I'm not throwing her away. I'm just, I'm collecting, basically. Like, these
I'm
are
building
great women.
my community
Yes,
building.
exactly. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay, I get it now. And so they called their old mentor, as much as they called the new one. Some of them, stayed with the same woman the entire time, but at the end of the day, they realize, and I would say that, you have a crew now, you have a family now. You have sisters now. Many of them live together, in apartments, supporting each other. We, have reunions, and everyone comes back, and they're so grateful to see each other. My email, my instant messenger, it is filled with girls thanking me, for, what they now understand, I was doing, when they were 12 or 13, and now they're, 20 something. And so there's a lot of hurt and pain in the world. Um, and we need each other. We need a circle of women, a circle of girls, to support each other and help us get through this thing called life. And at the end of the day, that's why it's important, to provide that circle, for those who are willing. And if it's not our circle, I hope you're with some circle, but we all need, that circle of love to support us.
Well, and there's studies that have come out. I actually have it linked on our website, one particular one. Most of them come out of cancer communities where they show the importance of support of women amongst women.
Mm,
But it's a big thing, especially for female populations, to have, or at least that's what they've studied,
right.
that kind of bond. And as a foster youth, if you aren't familiar, I mean, they can move multiple times in 1 year, so that there is no stability, there is no foundation. um,
Yeah,
I
40
always,
times in 4 years.
yes, yeah, a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. I remember one girl showed up to camp, um, and I can't remember what kind. She didn't have it wasn't a, like a lot of us, when we go somewhere, we have our nice bag and we put all our stuff in it and all that kind of stuff. And one girl, I think she showed up with a garbage bag, and I asked her about it. And what I've come to learn, and there's even an organization out there now that gives suitcases to foster kids, is they would always say, oh, you can see a foster kid a mile away because they're carrying a garbage bag, because that's what they throw all their stuff in every time they move from house to house. I mean, something that simple, that they all know that. And it's like almost a stigma kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier about the fact that we've been doing this work with youth, and we're now expanding it to women. And yeah, I would love for you to talk a little more about that. But I just want people to know that because of the success of this work with the youth, both Kenadie and I have had friends in our circles that are going, why don't you do this for women? you know So originally, when I created the curriculum, co-created it with my fellow leadership people, we had just come out of a leadership program, and we were like, oh, we wish we had this when we were teenagers. So that's where we originally started this, and now it's like coming back full circle, where now we can offer it elsewhere. So how are these programs, so what we've known as Hershey is going to now be called Camp Firefly, how are these programs for youth and or adults, if you want to speak to both, different from other things that are already out there, do you think?
Um, First of all, I also want to say, that the mentors solidified for me the woman concept. I mean, they are wanting to offer it to women. They often left your trainings with a renewed sense of identity or understanding of themselves. That not one was left without tearing up or crying, um, really mourning the the loss of what they thought about themselves, and being able to really create anew. And so I also knew that camp, if you remember, there were a ton of adults always around. And it was because of what they got.
Yeah.
I mean, we had people, casting directors, who just was like, I'm out. Whatever happens, you can't call me during these dates. And we have people who took off work. This is their vacation time. So they'd rather be with us,
Yeah.
in the mountains with no, Wi-Fi. Like this is what people wanted to do. So there was a hunger there. We're not offering it just to expand it, but I saw a hunger there for people to say, hey, I'm not too old for, to benefit. And I realized we're giving it to the kids, but I need it too. And I mean, I don't know everything that's out there, and I must imagine that, there's obviously probably other great programs, but this is special, in my opinion, my humble opinion, and not many people focus on the intangibles, um, things like values and respect and the gremlin and your compelling self, and all of the things that really deserve a lot of conversation around who you are. That's not your resume, not the school you're going to, not the ACT score you need, not the grade point average. And all those things are great, but being able to understand what your gifts are,
Yeah.
articulate that, appreciate others, acknowledge yourself and others, letting it land and really not pushing it off because you think you sound humble. Um, I mean, those are to me the great lessons of life. And I have not seen it offered anywhere else. And I'm a person who takes it, like you just said, I'm going to learn it. I've taken everything. I've gone everywhere, taken everything. If it's offered, I've been there. So, I'm
It's totally true, because every time I talk to her, she's like, "Oh, I just tried this thing," So this is where we're a little bit different in the sense of, like, I kind of stay the course on one thing and I really go deep, and and Kenny's like, "Did you try?" But what's beautiful about it is that it creates this beautiful melding where we know the latest and greatest, and also the great thing about kind of meshing this work that we've done with kind of a yogic root is all those things you just pointed out. That is living yoga. That
mm,
is that is the philosophy of grounding in self, and
mhm.
doing svadhyaya, that's self-study. So you just named it all. So, but I'm sorry, you got me so excited I had to jump in.
No, but that's it. That's why it's special, and I've seen it all. So, and if I saw anything close to it, I'd ask them to partner. Like, hey, you think like us,
Yeah.
but I haven't. And like we said in the very beginning of this podcast, this is an amalgamation of me and you,
Yeah.
and has been, for the last decade. And so, since there isn't another me and another you in the world, this is it.
And everything that people have given and taught us,
Right.
it's like whenever I think about this stuff, I don't think about me as much as I think about I'm just this person who happened to be the one that this teacher stood in front of and shared this work with me. And yeah, so it's I just feel really lucky that we found Hershey found this, and now this is created, and now it's taking yet another evolution. And I haven't publicly said this out loud yet, but part of this evolution is that I applied to a PhD program. And so I'm going to use the program to help make this program even stronger and really weave in those yogic threads and so forth. So here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go. So is there any other things you'd like to say before we close today?
Yeah, there is actually. Thank you for having me on.
Mm-hmm.
This is, many people wanted me to sort of codify in some way the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized until now it had never been done. So thanks for doing that. It will be easy to share now.
Yeah.
If someone wants to know what happened and how we came about. So I appreciate being able to finally tell the story in a way that is shareable. So I want to take the opportunity to really thank my college buddy.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to her live since the 90s, I believe, although I would love to. But she may not even understand the impact that she had on my life. And at this point, the impact that she has on so many young women. And just as you said, it's, and I didn't mean to sound like it's just me and you, but all of the things and people and experiences that we both have had contribute to what we're doing. And for her, she deserves the most credit. And if she ever gets a chance to watch this, or she finds it, I thank you and I love you, and I still do, and I hold you so dearly in my heart. And I know that you experience so much pain as a result of your experience, but I just want you to know that your pain really helped a lot of people. And that my Jewish name is Kaliel, which means vessel. And I was a vessel.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
And to you for really providing the sustainability and the formality, the structure, the standard, that we could build upon. Because without that, I had the love, but I didn't have what you brought. And so I'm just so happy that you're there too. So thank you.
All right, before we start both crying and the podcast goes completely off the rails.
Exactly.
I'm going to thank everybody for coming, and I definitely want to thank Kenadie for finally, I know videoing stuff isn't your favorite thing in the world, and so I'm grateful that you took this time and took the time to kind of sum it all up for us. And I'm hoping that it'll inspire people to watch us and see where we're going. And if you feel really compelled, please donate, to the program. We're redoing the website right now, and I'll have that at the end of the podcast. And yeah, I'm excited to see where this all goes. I have a feeling it's just going to be beyond what we could even imagine.
Me too.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for coming. Namaste to Kenadie.